Hi folks, and welcome to the first of hopefully many videos that I'm intending on uploading to YouTube on the subject of flashlights, in particular flashlights that are readily available in the UK. I've hesitated from doing this simply because my artistic and creative skills are absolutely appalling, as are my video editing skills, and that will become apparent, but I'm hoping you can forgive me on that and concentrate more on the content rather than the visual quality of it. So, flashlights in the UK, pretty appalling poor choice to be really. I mean, typified by this type of thing that I happen to be holding at the moment, you know, with a bunch of LEDs, light emitting diodes in the front, running typically off AA's or AAA's. You've all seen those in the supermarkets. Probably seen these eBay specials, you know, Facebook specials where they pop up with, you know, military grade flashlights as they call them. I think this particular one has an horrendous claim of 20,000 lumens or something like that. Well, between £5 and £10, that type of stuff. And to be honest, they're absolute garbage. Absolutely useless. The only reason I've still got them is so that I can show them on a video to you guys. But I mean, I certainly wouldn't use anything like that. So popping those aside for a second, what we will be looking at is little tiny keychain lights like that. You know, your little portable carry lights. That's a single AA in there. All the way up to, you know, monsters like this. And everything in between. So probably the first thing to have a think about in terms of flashlights is, what do you actually want it to do? What are you expecting from it? The second one is its size. The price obviously is extremely important. Its durability, can it take a knock? Can you drop it? What's it like in bad weather? Is it, you know, are you going to get water in it and it's going to break and stop working? So there's lots of things to consider, and unfortunately it's that old motto of buy cheap, buy twice, and you get what you pay for, and there's very little way really to avoid that. So, you know, things like this, you know, I think they're about £5, £6.99, something like that. I mean, I was playing around with it earlier, it'll probably work now, and then pressing the button and all of a sudden it wouldn't work. This is the type of thing that is just going to fail and go wrong on you. This one's the same, you know, rubbish. Whereas something like this, for example, I mean, you can drop that in a glass of water and it will continue to run. It's completely waterproof. The other consideration is the power source. Now, in the UK, we're all familiar with your zinc, alkaline and rechargeable batteries, AA's, AAA's, C's, D's. And you might want to stick with those types of batteries, but they do limit you quite considerably on the power source of your torch, mainly because these types of batteries here are rated between 1.5 if they're non-rechargeable and 1.2 volts if it's a rechargeable AA or AAA. But your new generation of batteries, this particular one is an 18650, and they refer to them in these numbers, and that's the diameter across the top and down the length, 18650, so 18 across the top, 650. These are Li-ion 3.7 volts, so they're a lot higher performance before we even start, and they come in a variety of sizes as well, which most people in the UK aren't familiar with. So, you know, there's an 18650, we've got a 26650, you know, we've got the much smaller 18350, and those, as I say, those are your Li-ion batteries. And I think that's probably your first problem that you're going to come across, is that the moment you're looking at these types, you're then having to look normally, a little bit of a monster charger there, so let's move these out of the way. You'll be looking at buying, there's several models, this is just one that I particularly use, but you're looking at buying a battery charger that is able to and dedicated to charging not only any rechargeable AA's, AAA's, but it will also charge any of those or any combination that you want to pop in there. Absolutely fantastic things, but you're looking at an investment to buy this before we even start, aren't we? So that might be a factor that puts people off choosing a torch such as this, such as this at first glance, that is powered by a 26650. However, a lot of the manufacturers now are including within them a USB charger. So you can have your battery in there and just simply plug it in and charge it, which is quite handy. So we'll be taking that into account in the future when we're reviewing the flashlights. Now, in terms of performance, we used to measure things, or we still do actually sometimes in the UK, based on watts. But what's important to note there is a wattage, a watt or a wattage, is not a measure of output, it's a measure of power consumption. And in the UK, when we were using the old incandescent light bulbs, you've probably still got a few knocking around in the house. A 50 watt light bulb, 60 watt light bulb. We became accustomed to the amount of light that we'd expect a light bulb that used 50 watts to emit. But it's completely erroneous to use that moving forward, and the terms that are used nowadays to measure the performance of flashlights are a little bit more complicated, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which way you look at it. So, with my crazy high-tech graphics, what we tend to find nowadays is the term lumens. And what a lumen refers to is the amount of light that is radiated from a given source. Now, that's great on a light bulb, like this example here. The light will emit from it in all directions, probably hit the sides of your house, etc., inside walls of your house, and illuminate a room. However, another factor that is quite important is called the candela, and what that's referring to is the complete opposite of a lumen, if you like, and the intensity of the beam. So as opposed to it scattering, all over the place and perhaps going somewhere where you don't want it, it's directed in a particular direction. So those are your two opposites. Another factor to bear in mind, and this is probably your most important one, but not one that's easily measured, which is lux. And what lux refers to is the amount of light that hits the particular place in which you happen to be aiming the torch. Now, that might be different if you're aiming a torch at something that's 10 meters away or something that is 50 meters away. So you'll find all these three things come into play when you're looking at any particular torch. So first of all, what's its lumen output? So it's raw output. What's its candela? So how focused is that beam going to be? And that will translate itself into your perceived performance of the torch, which is the amount of light that hits whatever it is that you're pointing the torch at, whether it be the neighbour's side of the house or a dog down at the bottom of the road, whatever it happens to be. So you take these two factors, and this is what you will perceive in the use of the torch. And they do that via several means. So we looked at this particular torch here with all these LEDs, but they're not particularly high performance LEDs in there, to be honest with you. So we'll take this one as an example, and we'll compare it to that one, and then perhaps that one. So what we're looking at here is a variety of torches, but for example purposes, this one is what they refer to as an EDC, or everyday carry, and this particular one runs off an 18650, but its performance is going to be marred by the size of the head. It's a very, very small head, it's a narrow head, and it will drastically affect its performance. So this particular design of torch is designed to slip easily inside and out inside of your pocket, etc., etc., and not catch on things. And this torch here is probably, lumens wise, 3 times the output of this particular one, but this one has a much larger head. So in terms of performance and the way in which this particular torch, which is designed with a very, very smooth large reflector, so we can get a relatively low powered torch like this that performs really, really well. In fact, this torch will throw a beam of light much further than this particular one, albeit this one does put out more light overall. But again, it's jumping back to this particular example here, and that it's a case of this versus this and a compromise between the two as to then how you visualize the light being thrown on a particular target. And I'm not going to waffle on about that too much more now, because it's far better, I think, if we actually have a look at some of them work, which we'll do in due course. But I will mention one last point, is that yes, you can see it in there that this particular reflector has a kind of orangey peel type of texture, and what that's going to do, that tells us straight away that this particular model of torch is going to throw a much more floody and balanced beam, simply because of the way that they've designed that reflector. And you compare the two, you can see there's not a great deal of difference between the size of the reflectors. This one's putting out, what, 2,500 lumens, something like that. This one's around 800, but this one here will still outperform this one in terms of distance, but not output. Hope that makes sense. The other thing to consider is the LED itself, and I think I did mention LED stands for light emitting diode. Now this one has loads of LEDs. This one only has the one. We'll probably get into a little bit more about the types of LEDs in question, but for example, this particular one uses a Cree XHP 70.2. That's a very, very high performance LED. I think it's the highest one that that Cree do commercially available at the moment, and they get quite hot and they throw out a lot of light. You don't need to go for something like that straight off, but there's a massive difference between, you know, which LEDs are using. You see this one is completely different to that one. That's a Cree LED as well. But if you went and put a 70.2 Cree XHP in this particular torch, it would just overheat. Crazy. So those are your flashlight basics, and I think on the next video I will cover some of the battery basics for you. Thank you very much.